Thursday, May 14th. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, the book club of The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay. Let's do this.
I was hankering for a big lunch today. I was feeling it. So I went out and I went over to Chipotle.
Chipotle.
Yeah,
That's a good
Chipotle.
show. You know, right next to my work, there is a big-ass Chipotle.
You know what?
It is the biggest Chipotle I ever seen.
You know what? I would go to eat at the Chipotle on 42nd Street.
Yep.
In that Chipotle, there's a long line. Like if you get there after 11:30 and before like 2, you have to wait for like a half hour to get your Chipotle.
That's Chipotle typical.
So they have a sign up now saying, we built another Chipotle that's bigger right around the corner, and there's maps and everything.
How around the corner is it?
It's like right there. It's like a block and a half away.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So I walked over there, just as crowded. God damn it.
The one near me is really big, and it's only super crowded during a certain, similar time interval. But you know what? You want to know the Chipotle secret?
That's the secret.
You can just fax/digitally send in
Yes,
your
you can.
orders
Not
and
only
then go
that,
get them.
All the ones I've been to, if you walk in and you're going to pay with credit, because apparently no one pays with credit but me. They have a guy with like a thing around his neck that can take credit card orders.
They do that at the Apple Store when it's crowded also. They'll just get the people who usually walk around and say, "How may I help you?" And they give them handheld credit card thingies, and they'll be like, "Paying with credit, just come over to me." And they scan and then slide your card,
yep.
and they type in the numbers,
But
and that's it.
I remember I was standing at this Chipotle, and there were like 100, not really 100, there were like 30 people in line.
That's a pretty big. I've seen like 20. I've never seen like 30.
And the guy comes out, he's like, "Who's paying with credit? I'll take your order right now. You'll be done." No one stepped up.
Wow.
So I was at the end of the line, so I was like, all right, here's the credit card for my $8 burrito.
Did they, if you're at the end of the line, though, how did you get your order up there? Because you got to go through the little line to talk to the people and say, "I want a fajita burrito with..."
You know what? Because no one else did it, the guy swiped me, and he stood there for a minute. He was like, all right. And then he put the thing down, went back, made my burrito, and handed it to me. It was badass.
I was actually thinking I would go there tomorrow. I think I'm going to digitally send in my order. I'm going to attempt that method.
See, normally I avoid the Chipotle because, eating 1,000 calories for lunch on like a Tuesday is not good for Rim, because Rim's asleep by 3:30.
The thing is, I'm not eating any breakfast tomorrow, so it's going to be pretty awesome.
I was just hungry all day. Like I had a decent dinner, and in the morning I got like one of those hot and crusty
Oh my God,
bagels.
what I ate today was so strange, right? So I get to work, and we're going to BK to talk to some peoples over there, right? So, we get on the subway, F train, we get off, right? And I'm like, man, I fucking got to eat something. So I just buy a glazed donut from a cart, right?
The cart glazed donut. I'm pretty sure.
It was a pretty good cart glazed donut.
I'm pretty sure the cart glazed donuts are identical to almost every donut in the city except for Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, it was all right. I ate it. The lady in front of me was really bitching that the orange juice was like $2. She was like, "Oh, goddamn.
$2?
You're lucky I am thirsty."
You know what, lady? Don't go near Grand Central.
I know, right? So it was actually a tiny, shitty orange juice. Grand Central, you get the nice carton one that's actually better.
No, forget that. You want the good orange juice. You want to know the secret in
Go
Grand
to the
Central.
grocery store and buy a half gallon.
No. If you want a good orange juice for the train, go to like that Zaro's. Don't get any food. They have like the worst food in the world. But they have that unpasteurized, like super awesome fresh orange juice.
Uh-huh.
It's like $4, but it's awesome.
Screw that.
It's
I want to get more orange juice for my money. Anyway, so then we go and we walk in, and there's a plate of croissants in the conference room. And I'm like, shit. And he's like, "You bought that donut." And then, right? Then they bring in a bowl of grapes, both kinds. And then, right, they bring later, right, after we've been there a while, they bring us like these turkey/ham sandwiches. You could pick either or. And I'm like, oh, goddamn. They were really trying to butter us up over there for reasons that I will not get into.
The cool thing is, though, go to some corporate training sometime, like those week-long fly somewhere on a business trip things. They'll give you breakfast and lunch like that every day.
Then they tried to offer us a car ride back, and we're like, "No, we'll take the subway, thanks."
Well, speaking of the car ride, what I was going with this is they did one of those like emergency response drills on 42nd Street near the Chipotle while I was trying to go there.
Were all the cops eating at the Chipotle?
No, they're all standing around going, The reason they were going, is it looks like they were all
They were
waiting.
all at the Dunkin' Donuts / KFC.
That's like the worst Dunkin' Donuts in the world.
It is, but all
not that
the
Dunkin' Donuts is good anyway. I've decided I'm done with Dunkin' Donuts. I'm done with shitty donuts and shitty bagel. I can't do it anymore. Like I think it's now.
Dunkin' Donuts bagel's the worst bagel.
It's not the worst bagel.
Well, I mean, it's the worst bagel you can, I mean, obviously someone could technically make a poop bagel with poop in it, but
I'll say this: Panera doesn't really have much better bagels.
no, they're very kind of meh.
Yeah, I don't know what was with that thread in the forum where people were like, man, Panera's awesome. It's like
That's because they don't know what's good. Remember, right? We think Panera's poop, right? But remember, like, I don't know, when we were at Citicon, right? Panera is a million times better than anything within like a 20-mile radius.
Oh my!
Right?
At
So
Citicon?
most people live in these, places that don't have good food is an incredible luxury. I mean,
Wow, Scott, way to put down everyone in the world except New York City and I guess Seattle.
no, there's plenty of places. From Paris.
Maybe Chicago.
Yeah, not London.
Man, we got this.
Berlin has good food.
We got this fancy
Tokyo.
international clock because our company's
Beijing.
going live overseas now. So we got one of those giant like red clocks that has all the different time zones on it.
Oh, you didn't get a bunch of separate clocks with
You realize we bought this thing. We got it. It arrived yesterday. Every 20 minutes, someone comes in and they're like, hey, what time is it in Helsinki? Haha. Hey, how much does this thing cost? Couldn't you have just bought 5 regular clocks?
Yes. All you need is like you get a US, you get a GMT, you get a
No, Scott.
you
Here's
get
the
an
reason.
Eastern California.
Here's why we got this thing. 1, it looks really snazzy in the new knock. Like
All
it
right.
looks professional. 2, it automatically, with a network cable, synchronizes to NTP.
You could get the ones that do it by radio.
Well, it also has Wi-Fi, but
Okay.
yeah. But even those radio ones usually are kind of shitty.
Really?
Yeah, they don't give you that good a time. You're much better off just going over the internet to NIST with NTP.
Uh-huh.
I'm the fucking NTP guy. NTP,
I've noticed.
yeah, NTP is my thing.
You should start an NTP consultancy.
I should just take over for the guy who wrote it when he dies.
He's a crazy Unix Santa.
Yeah, you know what I would do? Never change it because I don't think it's been changed in my lifetime.
What are you gonna do when we get like 128-bit computers? You're gonna have to do something.
No, I won't. Won't do anything. I'll just say, well, this is it. This is what you get. That's what he's been doing.
No, there's stuff that's happening, but it's all the sort of stuff you don't notice.
No, not much is happening.
Okay, anyway.
His documentation.
Let's get on with this episode before we drag on this crap too much longer.
All right. Suffice it to say, I was trying to walk to Chipotle. There was
Oh, you're still doing okay.
there was an ambulance also trying to get to Chipotle, which is where this thing was
To get
going
someone
on.
out who died in line waiting for.
I think it was just part of the exercise.
Uh-huh.
So it has its siren going, and the guy is sitting there like, ugh, and traffic's just not moving. Traffic was so not moving that I went to Chipotle, got my burrito, ate my burrito, left the Chipotle, walked back. It hadn't even gotten to Fifth Avenue yet.
From Madison.
Yeah.
It's like
hope not.
it's like 1,000 feet.
I hope no one was dying in there.
Was it going wee wee?
Yes, the whole time.
Whoa.
And there's this car in front of it. The guy in the car was this kind of fat guy, kind of balding, and he was sitting there just with his lips out. Like he looked the most exasperated I've ever seen a person look. He was,
Well, he couldn't go. There was someone in front of him, and there's
but the ambulance behind him honking the horn. Wee, 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 wee. He's just like.
Get some earplugs, man. There's nothing you could do.
So anyway,
All right, so news-ish. I got a tiny news. I don't want to talk about too much, but
tiny news.
There was some Google outage today. Like, there was some Google outage, a few times before, but this one was like sort of big because
I didn't know about this one until I saw it on the news later.
it was network related. Yeah, I didn't have any problems with Google at all.
Well, as far as I can tell, it was one of those big peering things where, to put this into layman's terms, because this isn't a Monday night show, imagine if you're a Greek peasant, right? And Zeus and Thor are having a pissing contest, and they knock and they knock over some villages in the process. That is what happened.
Yeah. No, so I just thought, it was sort of funny because, like, I was at this other people's office, and I tried to go to google.com. I was on their Wi-Fi, and it didn't really go, right? So I'm like, huh. And then, like, I go and I'm just reading Google News, which worked, right? And on Google News, there was a story about Google having an outage. right? I thought that was funny. And then, so I tried to do another Google search, and it worked. But the reason it was slow is because they were using stupid fucking OpenDNS, and OpenDNS.
Why?
OpenDNS freaking like runs Google like through itself. It does this weird fucking thing. Like in the top left corner, it'll say OpenDNS instead of saying Google, and it's like it redirects you from OpenDNS to Google. I don't know what the fuck it's doing, but it pissed me off. Anyway, I just got to say that's
why. It amazes me how many otherwise smart people will use OpenDNS.
They're just fucking...
Don't use it. If you don't know what it is, don't use it. If you know what it is, you already know not to use it.
Exactly. I think the thing is people know enough to be dangerous. They don't really know.
Well, they hear, it's the open source, because, I don't know. It's
just you can... A DNS server, it's bind. It's free. You just turn it on, and that's it. You're good.
Nah.
And your ISP gives you a DNS server. You can use that.
But yeah, luckily, that's one thing I really miss about RIT is that basically when the gods
we
fought...
had 100 open DNS servers.
But
no, I mean, no, not open DNS, regular old DNS servers.
Well, we had the 129.21.21.1 is gone.
Yeah.
It stopped
You
responding.
thought it was going to stay there forever?
Yeah, that thing, I've used that for like ever. And the fact that it's gone is a sad day for me.
That
was like my backup. And
just go find it. Ask some RIT student what their DNS server is.
But we were also on, no, that wasn't RIT's DNS server. That was IT's DNS server.
I'm saying go ask an RIT student what their DNS server is and you can use it.
Yeah. That's all you got?
Yeah.
Yeah, Google. That happens. So Cheerios. I assume everyone, we're not we're not breaking news here on Geeknights here, but I happened to find there's a weird side story where I saw this article this morning at 4:45 on Fark.
I didn't know Cheerios are yummy.
Yeah, they are.
How do you even know?
But on at 4:45 a.m. I see on Fark this Cheerios things, and I'm like, was it? Huh? And I read it, and I'm like, what? Whoa. Oh man, I got to talk about this later. And then throughout the day, I saw more and more news picking up on it. I got home and I went into my Delicious and I went to this Fark story to bring it up to be my news. And it was no longer on Fark. They moved it to Total Fark, which I don't pay for because I'm not crazy.
Why would they move it from regular Fark to Total Fark? Isn't it supposed to be the opposite direction? Like Total Fark is everything and then only good stuff goes to regular Fark?
It happens every now and then, but I have no idea why.
Maybe it's because it's a hot story and it's like, yeah, this story's so hot, we only want people to talk about it if they're awesome and pay for Total Fark. It's like only the awesome people can get in on this one.
Thing is, I'd probably, if I were at RIT
Thing is, how would you find it on Total Fark?
You pretty much go by what people are commenting on.
Yeah, I know, right?
But Cheerios either going to have to be regulated as a drug or have to stop lying about the health benefits or prove that they're not lying about the health benefits. And I really don't know what to think about this because it came out of nowhere. This just was like a bolt out of the blue.
Well, it came out of nowhere as far as we're concerned, but, maybe the people who, or deal with the sort of thing, maybe they saw it coming.
Yeah, if anyone has any insight, we'd really like to hear from you. We'll get you on the show because I see a very small number of possibilities. One, it just random, it came out and that's just it. This just happened. Maybe it was in the works for a while. Two, more likely, the FDA is this might be the tip of the iceberg of them going after people pulling this bullshit.
Yeah, here's the thing. It's I'm sort of torn on this because on the one hand, right, Cheerios does, and a lot of things sort of make, foods, regular old foods, are making increasingly crazy claims on their foods, right? You go buy some grape juice and it has these American Heart Association seals on it. And they don't say it outright, but they heavily imply that somehow if you drink grape juice, you're not going to have a heart attack and die, which is...
What about grape drink?
Right, It's like Cheerios really does the same sort of thing. They're like, oh man, cholesterol, heart, yeah, awesome.
Cheerios went a little bit further, though. But here's the thing.
But the point is, it's okay, I agree that the claims in the Cheerios are probably exaggerated, if not false, and that they should not be allowed to have the false advertising. That is very good, right? But there are much more egregious false advertisers out there that you should go after before
Homeopathy,
you go after the
Airborne,
Cheerios.
that ornithochalcum stuff.
That's like if you had like
Zycam BS.
That's like if you walk down the street, right, and there's a mass murderer. He's just like hosing everyone down with a flamethrower, like, and he's blowing up buildings, right?
I see you played Postal as well.
And there's another guy who just stabbed. He's just a hobo, and the hobo stabbed one dude. And you get all over that hobo. You're like, hobo, you're going to jail. And meanwhile, the mass murderer is right there. You don't care about him.
See, in this case, I picture the cop as he's hauling the hobo away, like topping his hat to the mass murderer, just like, hey.
See, that's the situation. So it's like, yes, you caught that stabbing hobo. Yeah, he deserved to go to jail.
But they don't go after.
But there's a mass murderer. What the fuck is wrong with you?
So they're going after Cheerios, but not like Zycam.
Exactly.
Or Airborne.
Yeah, right? Well, they did go after and they went after Airborne a little bit.
But Airborne's still being sold with the same bullshit claims.
Yeah, it's another thing, right? I heard that they were threatening to, if the Cheerios didn't fix themselves, to like stop Cheerios from going out, you know, just
now.
But
this...
they never threatened to remove like Airborne from the market. They just threatened to fine them a whole bunch.
So thus, what I'm curious is what's the impetus for this? Because the ad campaign that they're complaining about has been going on for like a year and a half.
What took them so long?
It was the claim that Cheerios can reduce cholesterol by 4% in 6 weeks.
You know what I would
quote,
do?
The FDA was responding to a complaint by the National Consumers League.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we should just join the National Consumers League and just constantly maybe, you know what? Here's an idea.
To do the same thing that the people who those four people, the parents' television console.
Right. The FCC, all the bullshit the FCC does is because all these cranky old people keep writing letters to the FCC telling them to get the swearing off television. Let's everyone write letters to the FDA and FTC just like the Parents Television Council does to complain about the fake medicines. And let's just keep doing it for every single fake medicine and every single false advertising on a food out there. Let's just keep doing it, and we'll end up like the Parents Television Council. A very small portion of the population of the country having a very large amount of power.
But what
Let's do it. I'm actually serious. I'm gonna do it. Start doing it.
We'll
tomorrow.
Well, we'll sort out the details. Make a forum post or something.
We have to start an NGO, and we have to give it a name, and we have to make a little website.
You want to actually start an NGO?
Yeah. How hard could it be?
All right. We could do that, or we could just actually incorporate Geeknights.
Well, no, we could start a little NGO, and all it will do is send letters to the FTC and FDA telling them about false advertising in food and medicine.
But anyway, what I'm wondering is, what was the real impetus for this? I mean, maybe it's the tip of the iceberg. Go after like the highest profile thing, get a lot of public support, and then just go after everything else after that, because everything else is low hanging. I mean, if you can get Cheerios for saying that it's good for your heart, you can get Zycam.
Oh, yeah. Which doesn't do anything except destroy your sense of smell.
Give or take.
And of course, they have ones that are not nasal sprays, right? Those don't destroy your sense of smell. They're just useless sucking candies.
Yeah. What about Head On?
That's just that's just a stick of wax. I mean, I guess Head On is okay because if you put a wick in it, it's a nice candle.
Well, Head On was brilliant. They didn't make any claim other than apply directly to the forehead.
Yeah, but there's an obvious implication of medicinal effect. And I think that we need some sort of, laws that give the, FDA, FTC, and judges discretion to make these subjective judgment calls that are obvious.
But anyway, things of the day.
So I saw this video on YouTube from RIT.
RIT.
Apparently they have some sort of Imagine RIT thing. I guess it's similar to the Brick City. I don't know what the deal is.
Imagine RIT was there when we were there, I think.
Was it? I think it's more newer. I don't remember.
Imagine RIT sounds really familiar. Or maybe I just get...
you get mail about it.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's the Brick City Festival, Springfest type of... It's one of those shticks, right?
Man, Springfest was only good the first year. Then we went to it. Then they ruined it.
I know, right?
Remember we had that all-night party?
I know. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, snap.
But, basically, for Imagine RIT, some RIT kids made one of the, some domino thing, cool domino knocky downy thing, and there's a YouTube video of it. And there's actually a second YouTube video it's sort of the making of the first YouTube video. And so, they got like dominoes going around the RIT flag, and they got one part, it hits a button on a coffee machine, and out comes like a printed paper with some RIT logo on it, and that knocks over some other dominoes, and it's good stuff.
Too bad they didn't knock over the Sentinel at the end.
All right.
Thing is, the Sentinel, for RIT people out there, I don't think they hate it anymore. I think only the people who were at RIT when they built it hated it because, college kids hate
anyone
anything.
who came to RIT now, anyone who's still there, unless they're like, someone who's been there a long time, to them, the Sentinel has just always been there. It's as natural as like, the tiger.
I think
with the golden balls
just
was.
like the Eiffel Tower. People hate anything that's new, and then once those people are gone, no one else cares.
Yeah, I mean, like how many times, like, there was like a big sign in a city, and everyone wanted to get rid of the sign. It was ugly, but then it stays there for so long. Now, if they want to get rid of the sign, oh, it's old. It's a part of the city. Don't get rid of it.
Like
my god,
that Sitco sign or
Right.
Hollywoodland.
All that sort of shit, right? So, the Sentinel. It is ugly, there is no doubt. It is big and monstrous and sort of out of place. I guess the color matches.
Now, the thing is, I think the Sentinel actually fits RIT's character very well, and I think it's kind of cool.
It's
the
not
thing
so
is,
great.
I would have preferred an enormous tiger on the scale of the Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if they just made that the same tiger statue only that big and on two legs.
The testicles would be too much for one man to paint in a night.
Just you drive down Memorial.
You see, like,
drive
10
down Law Memorial Drive straight down, and you see these two gigantic golden tiger nuts, just as big as your car.
You know what's sad? I almost said Sardia instead of Rhodes.
Yeah,
Like it was. Like
that's
it
where
almost came
Colossuses
out.
are from.
Yeah.
There were Colossus in both places.
So anyway, yeah, but not one with 9 strength and 9 fortitude or whatever those stats were called. Fuck magic.
Attack and defense. I don't give a shit.
Anyway, so I had some other thing of the day. I'm not going to use it because we'll talk about it for too long. So this is pretty good though. I saw the recent Star Trek movie. I thought it was badass. I'm very much a fan. I look forward to the sequel. And I have seen Star Wars. I'm sure many of you have seen Star Wars, the
You
original.
always compare the two, but really, they have nothing to do with each other.
It's funny because that's what this video is, and you haven't seen it yet. I'll show it to you after the show, but it is. But as Scott has now seen, the movies are more similar than you might think.
Well, at least the new ones. I mean, the old ones really don't have anything to do with Star Wars at all.
No, not at all. Well, they're in space.
I mean, this is sort of like this is not have anything to do with my like or dislike of Star Wars or Star Trek, but I mean, if you're gonna make sort of a shallow comparison of the two, right? It's X-Wing TIE fighter dogfighting versus a bunch of people standing in a room and pretending the room is shaking.
But at the same time, Star Trek technology would probably kick the shit out of Star Wars technology.
Well, remember, depends when. I mean, we're talking about the old Republic. Star Trek's got nothing, right? But if you're talking about, original trilogy, it's like, freaking, it's the equivalent of outer space Fist of the North Star, right? So, man, we should make Hokutono outer space.
That might be too much. What's this? Did they launch Kenshiro at ships?
No, the ship goes, and then the other ship explodes.
That might be too much. So to talk about legitimate art and literature, I read and finished Kavalier and Clay, the Geeknights book club.
All right, and as a disclaimer, while I have to say, I read it a while ago, months and months ago, perhaps even over a year ago. I don't remember, right? But when I read it, I think it's still my favorite book, even though I've only read it once. Like, it just, and I remember it being my favorite book. But as is the way of my brain, many of the details are forgotten, right? But I'm sure that as soon as we begin discussing, because I remember, many things, it will come rushing back to me, and I'll be like, "Oh man!"
I mean, pretty much the best part of the entire novel was when Joe...
Oh, wait. Let's see what you think the best part is.
When Joe exploded the head of that guy who was pounding that farmer into the ground like a pile driver.
That's what you think? No, see, for me, there's two different parts
This is a book that was about comic books and Jews and New York City. Like, what book could be more up your alley?
Also the war.
Also the war.
And also
Golems.
And escapism, like Houdini types.
But
and
also
also every other
escapism.
type of escapism.
You see what he did there?
Yeah.
Now, before we go any further, just this is the Geeknights book club. This kind of came in after all that news and stuff. If you haven't read Michael Chabon's Kavalier and Clay,
the Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay,
don't listen to this. Go listen to the other episode where we said, "Hey, this is the next book in the book club," and then read that book because that book.
And by
is
the way,
amazing.
this book won Pulitzer Prize for best book. So you should. I don't know if it was for best book, but it won the Pulitzer Prize, and it should have been for best book. Period. But yes,
best book involving comic books.
So that means it's legit, like for reals. That is, serious. It's not like, sure you read sci-fi books and they have Hugo and Nebula awards, which are not, I don't want to put them down. Those are excellent awards, and only great sci-fi books have won those awards. But a Pulitzer Prize is like 2 steps beyond that. That is like serious business. So anyway, I think there were 2 equivalent best parts of the book, right? Number 1 was the Empire State Building roof scene.
That was pretty well done.
Like while reading that, I was working in the city, I kind of wanted to. I thought about going in line and going up there.
What? Because you're waiting to meet your Tracy Bacon?
I don't know. I was just thinking about going up there, but then I saw there was a long line, and I was like, "Oh, fuck it."
But Scott, Tracy's up there waiting for you.
I know, right? No, just thinking about going up there because the last time I was up there, how old do you think I was?
Scott, I've never been up there.
Wow. Let's go up there.
Yeah, we should.
Let's go up there.
But I'm not Tracy Bacon.
No. Last time I was up there, I was 10 years old. I went with my grandma. We took the express bus from Queens. So, yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long time.
I don't know. I liked the part.
Oh, wait. No, my favorite part was in Antarctica.
That whole thing?
Mostly the finish of it.
That was, I don't know. I guess that was, you expected that sort of thing to happen in terms of finally gets his revenge or kills someone or something and then realizes it. But the fact that they kind of not but Michael Chabon does this a lot. He'll kind of gloss over a detail and then later on tell you what actually happened.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And a lot of the good scenes, I think, were like that. Like that was in particular where they don't point out that he's dead until a little while later. Or I think the best example was with the raid in the Jersey Shore.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? How it's describing, it starts out, he went there and all this stuff. And then he just has this line these people were here at these times, as the police report would later indicate. And then he just goes on explaining the rest of the scene in the story, and you're like, wait a minute, police report? What's it? What's going on here?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Of course, the cool thing about that, too, is notice how that would make things that were like a scene that if you just read it without knowing, that one sentence he throws in near the beginning, that you have one feeling, one vibe, they're at the shore, oh, he's doing this. But because he'll have that one line that adds this whole ominous hint to everything. Suddenly you're wondering, wait a minute, is someone going to die? What's going to happen? What's going on? Oh, no.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Because it's a foreshadow, right? And it's not even just a foreshadow, which is sort of like a hint. It's it's not a hint, it's a guarantee. Something's going to happen, but it could be all these possibilities.
Yep. And plus, the book starts out...
As opposed to a foreshadow, which is a hint, but not a guarantee that usually you know exactly what's going to happen.
But more often than not, the book kept hinting the whole time at all these future tragedies. And then they were rarely as bad as you expected them to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, nothing really, really terrible happens.
Other than,
it's not a tragedy story, right?
Well, other than World War II.
Well, yeah, but I mean, to the main type characters, it's mostly, an adventure story with, it's primarily actually an adventure story, I would say.
Well, I would say it was an adventure story for the first 2/3, maybe 3/4.
Yeah.
But then
once he gets back from the war, it's not
pretty much as the eras changed. It's the 50s changed everyone, and everyone moves out to suburbia and leads these lame fake lives, and they all forget about adventure, and they all just kind of they live this mundane existence. and it takes a big spark to put him back into rights again.
Yeah, I think the big thing about this book is how, while it is a work of fiction, like how much of it like just matches up with real things, right? For example, right, about the start of the book is like, when like Superman is hitting the shelves, and about the end of the book is when they're having the the trials for right,
all that happened.
Well, no, that is that range of years is the golden age of comic books. So it's like covering that exact period of time. And other interesting things like the whole beginning of the book where like they're in the comic book business, right? Basically, what that is he took the real world stories of all of these different comic book creators in the history of American comic books, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Will Eisner, Steranko, like all these, comic book people, right? He took all their stories, which are well documented, and sort of combined them and mished them and mashed them together, into the story of just two people. So it's like, you're learning the professional histories of all these, comic book, greats of the United States all at once. And it's, if you don't know it, you won't realize it.
At the same time, I feel like you get a sort of a history and like an amalgamated history of the eras, like each decade, each societal era.
That's a Forrest Gump kind of thing?
Of New York City in particular. Like you get like the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. Like you get each one kind of just what people felt like and what the vibe was through the characters. Now they're vibrant in one era, and then the world's beating them down in the war, and then after the war, the kind of post-war normalcy and everything. And I don't know, I really dug that.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff like remember when he goes to Grand Central to get on the train to Canada, right? Grand Central to Canada, okay, right?
Yep.
I wish it still went to Canada.
Yeah.
And then, right, like he gets off and he turns around, but wasn't that also when like he got into a fight with what's the German boxer?
Max Schmeling.
Max Schmeling, he got punched out.
But wasn't
that the same place, right?
But I like the mythology of even like the Max Schmeling incident, because obviously Michael Chabon never lets you know if that was really Max Schmeling.
I know, right? It's like there's so much of the mythological stuff mixed in with this reality stuff. You got the Golem and the Max Schmeling and the
but I think it's
the Indiana Jones style adventure in Antarctica.
I think it's all allegory, that all the comic books from each era represent what people were like in that era and what people were feeling in that era. And you look at the Golden Age and compare it to what was going on in the places where comics were being made during the Golden Age, and I think there's a strong reflection.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm not even gonna say I think I know. And this is just an amazing novel that, as an aside, points that out in a really excellent way. Because that's not really the focus. That's just like this amazing parallelism that I think is what gives the book a lot of its strength.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that it's written.
And you've also got, there are other instances of like, famous people, like what's his name is in there? Isn't Dali, or was it Dali, or was it Picasso is in there? Someone was.
It was either Dali or Picasso.
I forget which one it was.
Who almost fantastically died in a diving accident in his parlor.
Yeah, I forget which one it was, but he's got like, famous people from history, sort of, who are of the time, sort of coming in as, mythical characters almost. It's pretty. It's. All right. So what else? What else do you have to say about this book?
That is, I mean, just before we get into more details or good scenes or anything, the writing in this book is, for lack of a better word, flawless.
Yeah.
It is just, his phrasing is so smooth and so flowing, and like the structure of every paragraph is like parallel to the paragraph after it, and it kind of pulls you into this rhythm, and he'll drag you along and you'll get really into it, and then he'll pull a gigantic change up suddenly. Or, I run into this a lot with less apt writers, where you'll be reading a story or watching an anime or comic book or something, and it gets to the point to where you can predict like where the story is going to go from here. Like a good example is in the beginning when they actually start making comic books for Ashkenazi and that other guy, and the midget radio comics, whatever.
Yep.
And you see right away, like after this, there's going to be the long story of they're being exploited, but they have their creative freedom and the fighting and eventually breaking free and making comics elsewhere. All this sort of, like, you have this expectation of where the story is going to go. And the story does go that way. Otherwise, it'd be like this giant twist and it wouldn't be as good of a book. Instead, Shaban just kind of gets to the point, and the moment you know where the story is going to go next, it skips ahead to the next point after all the stuff you knew was going to happen to where you don't know what's going to happen again. Like, it skips every possible tedious moment in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rare that I find a work that does that.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I didn't really think about it that way.
Well, it happens a lot of times. I'm more like the Alaska thing, like it gets to the point where it's resolved, and then it doesn't follow the story of getting back or all that other stuff.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
You skip large swatches of the story where the narrative would have been predictable.
At some point in the story, it skips like a whole ton of years, right?
Yeah, but look, a lot, like when it skips the most time is when they're living that boring suburban life.
Exactly, it pretty much skips over when anything's not happening. If the status quo doesn't change for a long period of time, it just... glosses right over and gets to the point where there's action.
The book skips...
how many years is he like in the Empire State Building just living there working on his thing that, they don't really...
The book skips all the license plate making and gets to the one good part.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it milks that good part.
And I think, earlier in the book when there's action-y adventure type stuff, it's they'd have to skip fewer years than when, the boring stuff happens later.
Plus just the diction and... I don't know. The writing is just amazing, and it really
he uses grown-up words.
He instills a sense of nostalgia for things in the context of the book, not just say I was older.
Yeah, it's not like I'm an old guy and I have nostalgia for Superman, right? It's like these characters start out pretty young, teenagers, right? And then you pass so many years in the book. But then you're having nostalgia for the earlier stuff in the book itself.
Yep. Especially because he writes the
Remember
characters.
when Max Schmeling punched you in the face?
Remember when we burned our mouths on that 4-cheese Red Baron pizza?
Right, exactly.
But the book, I don't know, he really writes the virility and vitality of youth very well, and that in and of itself wouldn't be amazing except for the fact that the counterpoint of when they're older, like the characters at each age are written in such a way that you start to feel the world from the perspective of someone who is that age, who is living in that age. I mean, getting to the point where they're in their 20s, 30s, and I feel the same way reading them, thinking about their youth, that I feel thinking about myself when I was 17 or 18. And they change so realistically that it's very hard to separate these fake characters from just the way real life goes. What bothered me, though, is that as a result, when they're in their 30s and then when they're getting older, I could feel the way I'm going to feel when I'm that age looking back on now, and I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. But I feel like it is dead on accurate.
Yeah, I guess. At least, in a... I don't know.
You feeling old?
Not yet.
I think part of it is that notice how when the adventure stops and when they start leading the mundane lives, the glimmer of hope in the end is that they sort all their shit out, and the book clearly ends with them making the rest of their adventures.
Well, yeah, because it's right, they start off, right, with, the thing is Joe, right, he's always sort of been adventure. He's like the hero. And Sam is just the sidekick, right? But, he doesn't...
But notice how in the beginning of the book, Joe's adventures are not amazing to him.
Right, exactly. They're never really amazing to him at all, And, he, at the beginning of the book, a lot of his adventures have already happened, his adventures in Prague and whatever, It's sort of like, he's escaped and now he's in the U.S.
The thing is, you could have written a whole novel just about him in Prague and his family and the eventual escape and then what happened to the golem.
Right.
If the book had just followed that all the way to the end, it probably would have been a great book anyway. But instead, it does this thing that's 1,000 times better.
Well, because if it was just about that, it would be, sort of like a short, quirky kind of sci-fi story. It wouldn't be, something else.
I do like how you don't ever, you have no idea how the golem got there. It just kind of comes back at the end, coincidentally parallel to when he starts making his own golems again.
Yeah.
The golem died, yeah, all that stuff.
Well, that's the thing, is it's always, really cool how I think that a lot of the great sci-fi and fantasy books out there are the ones that are, go to the sci-fi fantasy shelves in the store, right? Think about, just imagine yourself in a Borders or a Barnes and Noble.
All right, I'm seeing
in front of a fantasy sci-fi shelf,
All
right?
right, here's what I'm seeing. I see the tableau of Forgotten Realms.
Okay.
Next to that, I see a bunch of novels with like giant dragons on them.
Yep.
Then I see a bunch of novels like big barbarian sword guys.
All right.
And then I see planets with spaceships around them.
All right. Now, the thing, right? See, at least from my perspective, right? The stuff that is like blatant high fantasy, like you open the book, page 1, tons of dragons and wizards and magic and swords, right? Or blatant, like outer space awesomeness, like you open the first page, spacemen and aliens and rockets and lasers and whatever, right? That sort of stuff is typically, the pulp, shallowy kind of stuff, right? But the things that are less overt, not high with their fantasy, not pulp with their sci-fi, where, the science fiction elements are more subdued or subtle or perhaps not even, questionable if they even really exist, or the fantasy things where like, sure, this book has, sort of fantastic elements, is there really magic in this golem and, all these sorts of things that are sort of impossible. But
of course,
the story is told in such a way that he includes those elements without actually, making you think he's in some magical world, because it's like they happen, but they didn't really happen.
Well, at the same time, they weren't magical in the high fantasy sense. They were magical in the improbable but not impossible events often feel magical or legendary or mythic after the fact, but when you're actually doing them, they feel much more mundane. I mean, the fight with Max Schmeling, quote unquote, was just, I got my ass kicked. But later, it becomes this mythical, I fought with Max Schmeling. The golem, in reality, was, if you look at it from a rational perspective, was just this Jewish artifact that they had to smuggle out of the country. But after the fact, it becomes this, this was the golem of Prague that, escaped.
Yeah, I mean, think about Indiana Jones, right? Other than stuff like, the stuff that happens at the end of the movies, right?
Yeah.
Everything that happens before the end of the movie, right, is all completely mundane, right? But when you look at it, it really feels like this fantasy adventure almost. Like, there's no way. Except, the final part, which is absolute, complete fantasy, right? Of either the first or third movies. So this is sort of the same thing, right? You've got like Houdini, right? Houdini in his day was completely mundane, but now he's, nowadays looking back, he's like a fantastic character, and the same thing with like, what the comic book creators were doing, right? In their day, they were just guys going to work making comic books. It wasn't like, but now we look at the history of those comic book creators as if it was some sort of, fantastic, amazing thing when it was just some guys going to work.
One thing I can say the book really did do for me, though, was it made me, like, I love New York City, but it made me appreciate New York City more than I thought I could.
Well, because I think what it does is it portrays the fantasy New York that we all, wish for, and not,
But at the same time, here's the thing: it portrays the fantasy New York.
It's like
right?
it really puts you in that Art Deco New York, awesome buildings, everything is great, oh my gosh, kind of setting.
But it portrays the fantasy New York like this, and yet I'm walking and I look up and there is the Empire State Building.
Well, because
and it's exactly the way it was described.
Well, see, I think that's the thing, is that New York, the physicality of much of the buildings and the architecture and the streets and all these sorts of things, sort of support that fantasy world. But the totality of the people, it was never really real. But in the movies, it was real. But in the real world, it was never 100%. It was always.
Well, it's part of the thing that mythology always comes from the past when, the memories are hazy and you have nostalgia. I think it's a mix of memory and nostalgia. You running out of steam here?
Yeah. I'm just trying to remember more of the stuff that went on.
I mean, we could talk about specifics. I mean,
yeah.
I love the characters. I love when you get just like all these side characters and they're all just so weird or quirky in the, real human way. Like the mad bomber, what bombs with a trident at the bar mitzvah.
Yeah, right. Or how about, there's the Sam's dad, the sideshow
See,
Superman,
another larger
right?
than life figure who was very mundane, but yet, like in retrospect, gains this mythic quality.
Right. And also, the obvious, superhero-ness of it, relating to the comic books. You've got the old guy who helped him escape with the golem.
Kornblum is like Kornblum is, I don't know, he feels like he should be in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
He reminds me of the
is a
Russian guy in
superhero.
Ex Machina.
Yeah, I like the Russian guy in Ex Machina.
It's sort of the same kind of guy. The old guy is a little bit, but he's, totally awesome and he helps you out and yeah, that kind of character.
Yep.
Yeah. Something actually here's something that made me feel kind of stupid, right? Towards the end of the book when, when they compare when they're at the congressional hearing or whatever it is.
Yep.
And they draw the comparison between, he always put every book he worked on, he put in a sidekick and he was, totally gay, and they draw that out and it's like, I'm like, oh wow, why did I not ever realize that? That's sort of obvious. But so when, the congressman came out with that one, I was like, oh wow, how did I not see that obvious thing there? Huh.
I don't know. I guess, I went into the book, like I didn't even read the back cover. I just drove right into it.
I didn't read the back cover.
I was 100% sure he was gay from the moment he was in the steam house with his dad. It was like obvious. It was like, well, he's gay. That's interesting.
Wow, it's like, yeah, I didn't, when I first read it, like I didn't, go back to the, when I got to the end and I didn't think back to the steam house, but now that you just said it, I was like, oh.
I did it's a typical almost cliche thing to do when after the hearing and, they take him, Joe, and they take him out and they get him a drink and they're like, yeah, that sucks. And he looks at him, he's like, you guys didn't act really surprised at all. And they're both like, seriously.
Yeah.
Dude.
Really? Okay. I know this book is quite epicness.
Yeah,
But you know, because if you're listening, you've read it.
Yeah, it's one of the rare books I could definitely read again at least one more time in my life.
I got to read it again because I read it and I was like, this is better and more up my alley than any book I've ever read. But I've only read it once simply because I've been,
I do
reading other
wonder, I
things.
would like to hear the perspective of someone reading it who doesn't know about comic books or Jews or New York City.
Yeah, that's something is like everyone I know who's read it or talked about it
Knows about comic books and Jews and
was
lives
either
in
a
New York
Jew
City.
or a comic book reader or a New York person or, I've never really, it's like I've seen a lot of people reading this book. It's very popular, but like it's all been New York Jews, comic book people, or some combination of the three, right? I've never seen someone reading this book or, met someone who's read the book, and I've known they read the book, who is not New York at all, not Jewish at all, not comic book at all, right? And I would really like to know what that kind of person would get from the book, because like there's all sorts of things that they probably wouldn't recognize, they really, they might not have a really good, concept of like what the Empire State Building like really looks like and what it's like to be there.
At the same time, that might make the book feel even more epic because if you haven't seen it, the way it's described is so kind of amazing and magical in and of itself that it kind of draws you into the world. And then if you go to New York later, you'd probably have the revelation of, wow, it's really like that.
It's definitely, it's whenever you read a book that's, about things you're familiar with, right? And it's sort of like when they say Grand Central, right? I know exactly what Grand Central looks like, down to like many minute details. So if a book says you're in Grand Central, right? I'm like, oh, I know exactly what, it's like perfect, right? But someone else who doesn't, might not have been there ever, just thinks of some amazing train station and it gives them more room in the imagination department, and there's something to be said for both there. But, it's a different experience and reading it depending on your previous knowledge, gives you a different, you're going to take something different away from that scene in Grand Central based on your familiarity with the setting and such. And not just the setting, there are other things too to be familiar with. Like there's the whole bar mitzvah thing. It's like, being familiar with a bar mitzvah and that culture and those type of people, you take something different away.
But that guy.
Being familiar with the history of comic books, you take something different away. And the thing is, pretty much everything in this book, except for the sort of freaky art scene, I am very familiar with.
Thing is, that art scene, like, if I had to have a favorite part of the book, it's the whole part where they're kind of immersed in and around, like the vitality of youth, and they're in that art scene just doing crazy crap all the time. And Rosa Sachs is possibly the most attractive person in a novel ever.
I don't know. I didn't think she was so like attractive. You know, I mean, like obviously.
Well, Scott, look at me. Who have I been attracted to my entire life? Arty girls.
Yeah, I like arty girls too.
Yeah, Rosa Sachs is an arty girl.
Yeah, but you know, she didn't come across as, you know, like, oh man, I want some of that. It was just like, yep, she's, you know, the girl. All right. I don't know.
Huh? Maybe Tracy's more up your alley?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know. I felt that Rosa was portrayed early on in this painfully sensual way. But there might have just been me reading into it.
Yeah. Her dad's kind of fun.
That's awesome. Longman, Harku.
Yeah.
See, but that that is what I want life to be like. And I guess that is what made...
Yeah, I'd like to live the life of Longman Harku.
That's what made the end of the book so full of, like, the end of the book was just nothing but driving, desperate melancholy until the very, very end when the golem arrives.
Yeah.
Like, it was to the point to where, like, I remember resolving to myself as I was reading it that I will never have my life have a chapter that is like the end of this novel.
I don't have a chapter that's like any chapters of this novel. I'll take any one I can get, even, you know, the bad ones. It's all right.
I don't know. I could do without the living a boring life in suburbia part.
Okay, maybe. But I mean,
because I'm almost doing that now.
But see, even that boring life in suburbia, right? It was a suburbia from an older time that was portrayed in sort of a very nostalgic way of, you know, going down to the drugstore and buying comic books.
I didn't see it as nostalgic at all. It would only be nostalgic to me, to people who were nostalgic in the meta perspective for that
exactly
era.
Right.
Because reading it, I was, you know, it's portrayed through the view of the characters, so they're nostalgic for the awesome times in the 30s.
Yeah, but the child, it's that, you know, the childhood of what's the kid's name? I forget. But you know, the kid's life during that suburban, you know, time, you know, is nostalgic to people who, you know, think about that. You know, it's sort of a
that's because because for
it's sort
him,
of a Christmas story kind of way.
For young Thomas, the second Thomas,
right, Thomas, okay.
That's going to be the larger than life, you know, look at his childhood. That whole era was mundane to the parents because they're living mundane lives now, and it's the present for them, and they're nostalgic for the adventures of youth. Joe jumping off of the Empire State Building with a rubber band, and him like sneaking around New York and all that stuff he was doing, and going to the comic books, and his dad being a comic artist, those are going to be his Kavalier and Clay escapist adventures and his nostalgia and his myth when he's older looking back.
Yep.
But the nostalgia wasn't there in the book. All the book did was show you that, look, his nostalgia is going to be in the future, and the cycle repeats, and every generation's nostalgia and all that sort of symbolic, you know, cycling forever and ever.
The major symbolism, though, was
the only people who get to keep their lives like that the whole time are Longman Harkus.
Yeah. The major symbolism in the book, though, is always escapism. You know, it's just everything is always, he just throws that escape metaphor in wherever he can get it. You know, Houdini escapism, comic book escapism,
conformity escapism.
The character they come up with is the escapist. You know, it's just all the way through. It's always
they literally, physically, metaphorically, and spiritually escape from a lot of things, both forward, backward, and also inward.
It's just constant escape over and over and over and over again. You know, I mean, it's just that's where it's at. I mean, if you there's some comic books from Dark Horse. There's, you know, The Escapist. I forget what there's two series, right? There's one that is a mini series by Brian K. Vaughan, you know, I think it's just called The Escapists, and that's sort of based on this novel, and it's really good. I have the first issue of it, but I was never able to get that. I don't think they made a trade. I think you have to get the hardcover, which is annoying, but I'm going to get it. And then I think there's another one that is actually like The Adventures of the Escapist, which is, you know, is the comic books that they were drawing. You know, the guy with the black suit and the big key on his chest going around, you know, escaping and fighting bad guys. So those are the two comic books that Dark Horse put out based on this book here. Yeah, so you are aware of them.
Actually, I think it looks like they're. I see all this talk about a movie, but I'm just going to ignore that.
I read basically they were gonna make a movie and they didn't. Don't worry about it. Just
It
ignore
looks like they also made. Well, actually, Shavon made the Escapist comic books.
Right. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah,
Just ignore all that movie crap.
doesn't matter. We're really only talking about the book here.
Yeah, read the book.
The book is absolutely amazing.
You've read the book.
You should have read the book. I
hope
assume
so.
you've read the book. Otherwise, we just ruined
We
the
just
whole
ruined
book.
the whole thing. That's all right.
All right, I
Do we
think
have
we're
anything
done.
else to say?
I think we should wrap it up.
Okay.
But I don't think we should announce the next book club book yet. 'Cause-
Wait, you have to choose.
Yeah,
I chose this one.
and I will choose.
Choose now.
I have no idea.
I had to choose right now.
You're gonna make me choose on the spot. I'm gonna pick something that no one's gonna read. I'm gonna pick like the Odyssey. Or
That's no good.
are you kidding? The Odyssey is one of the greatest
I
works of
didn't
literature
say the
ever.
Odyssey is not good. I said it's no good as a choice for the book club.
Why not?
Because what are you going to say about the Odyssey in the book club?
I got stuff to say,
I like Cyclopses.
but nobody likes Cyclopi.
I like Cyclopi.
This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geek Nights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.